Guys, my bad that this review was a bit late. I was too busy going on a crusade against the Koroks, trying to crucify every one of those demon spawns every time I see them. So far, I've only crucified 69 of them, only 420 more to go. On a more serious note, Tears of the Kingdom is one of the best games I've played this year. Nintendo has knocked it out of the park with this game because Tears of the Kingdom is a masterpiece. It's been 6 years since they've released the critically acclaimed Breath of the Wild, and everyone was kinda worried that Nintendo wouldn't be able to replicate the same quality in the sequel. Everyone and their mother loved Breath of the Wild, and for Tears of the Kingdom to match that same quality was a pretty tall order itself. But holy crap, have Nintendo done it. Looking at other reviews, it pretty much received 9s and 10s across the board. All of them pretty much saying that this is one of the best Legend of Zelda games ever. So, do I consider it one of the best Zelda games ever? Well, I can't really say because, to be honest, I've never played a Legend of Zelda game before. Pretty much my experience with it is that I've played Link one time in Super Smash Bros. Yeah, I know, you guys can crucify me like a Korok for missing out on one of the best franchises in gaming history. But after playing this game, I can see why this franchise is so beloved. Jumping into Tears of the Kingdom with no prior knowledge of anything, I didn't know what to expect. And after about 60 hours of being glued to this game, I can definitely say that Tears of the Kingdom is one of the best games to ever release. I believe that this game is on the same level as Elden Ring in terms of scale and sheer quality. Yes, I think this game is that good, and Nintendo has really blown me away with everything I've experienced here. But before I gush about this game for the rest of the review, I want to talk about some of the problems this game has, which to no one's surprise, there aren't very many. The biggest problem that this game has is really the performance. Because it was released on underpowered hardware, the game would lag a ton when there's a lot of stuff happening on the screen. Usually when in combat, the frames would drop below 30 FPS for a bit whenever something explodes or when there's just particle effects anywhere. It's not horrible, but it's quite noticeable when it does happen. And honestly, I'm surprised that this game doesn't lag any more than it does, because this game world is massive, and we all know that the Switch isn't exactly as powerful as the PS5 or Series X, so I wasn't expecting much in terms of optimization here. Having this game run buttery smooth for about 95% of the time is a huge undertaking, and amazingly enough, they've managed to do it, which is a testament to how well optimized this game is. Granted, they did only have one platform to develop for, but I mean, so did Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and that game was a hot mess in terms of optimization. So, compared to that, Tears of the Kingdom is mostly a lag-free experience. The graphics for Tears of the Kingdom are immaculate. The unique art style that this game and Breath of the Wild has is one of the most iconic art styles in the gaming industry, and it shows here with just how beautiful everything looks. Every moment of this game feels like it should belong in a painting from beginning to end. The lighting and color palette is super saturated with such vibrant colors and a distinct cell shading to give the sort of fairy tale-esque visuals. The textures are extremely detailed down to the very minute pixels. The draw distance is amazingly far, allowing you to see the many amounts of beautiful bombs around you as far as the eye can see. The developers even knew that their game looked great and wanted the players to experience it too, so they made it required to get launched from the watchtowers in order to reveal that area of the map. And it never got old because it was just so awe-inspiring seeing what everything looked like from the bird's eye view. The art for the character and monster designs are some of the most memorable and unique designs I've seen recently. Zelda changed from her traveler's attire to a sort of ancient Greek robe thing with her hair shorter. Everyone is simping over Purah because she looks like a waifu.
Yes! Yes! Come to Papa!
Guys, calm down. Keep it in your pants, alright? We don't do that kind of stuff here. Because she's mine. And Ganon's got giga dad bod energy. Honestly, I think the internet is simping over him more than Purah.
Don't be intimidated, Squidward. Try to imagine him in his underwear. Oh no, he's high!
Anyway, the character designs in this game are top tier, and they've already made their mark on their fan base. By far the biggest and best thing that Tears of the Kingdom does well is the open world, and all I can say is Holy crap, this is the biggest open world I've ever seen in a video game. I have been literally exploring for hours on end, and I still have so much of this game that I've yet to discover. To give you some context, it took me about 10 hours of gameplay to get from this point to this point here, because there were just so many things that caught my eye along the way. The surface level of Hyrule alone provides upwards of 100 hours of content, maybe even more. There's so much hidden content and little side adventures that are easily missable because they're never outright given to you, and you have to really go out of your way to find some of these. And it's crazy how missable these quest lines are because they get some really useful stuff, like the whole Koga quest line gives you the auto build function. And it wasn't until after I beat the game that I learned that there's a quest line that lets you upgrade your armor. That would have been useful against the monsters two-shotting me. There's just so much content in Hyrule for one game alone, like in Breath of the Wild, but the developers didn't want to stop there. They've added 2 more entire zones for us to explore, the depths and the sky, that are both just as interesting as the surface. And the best part is that you can go between all 3 of these layers seamlessly. You want to go to the depths? Just jump down one of the many giant ominous holes in the ground that'll lead you straight there. If you want to go to the Sky Islands, just launch yourself out of a watchtower or build a vehicle that flies you all the way up there, or reverse the movement of one of the many falling sky rocks to lift you up there. The point is, you can just travel between these 3 planes without any loading screens at all, and it does so well to immerse me into this immaculate world of Hyrule. And immersed in this world I was for the entirety of my playthrough of this game because each area is so wildly different. Every minute spent playing this game captivated my full attention because there would always be something interesting just beyond the horizon that catches my eye. Whether it be a dragon temple in the jungle area, or a giant monument that stands above Goron City, or a giant 3-headed dragon flying around menacingly, there is just no end of cool stuff you could find out in this open world, and it lends itself so well for an endless amount of emergent gameplay. And both the depths and the sky each have their own unique characteristics about them. The depths is this dark underside of Hyrule where the gloom festers, and you gotta light your way through the darkness in order to see anything. And I actually really like this area because it reminded me a lot of Made in Abyss, which, if you haven't seen that anime, is about 2 kids exploring a really big dark hole in the ground. And me jumping down these really deep and dark holes in the ground made me feel like I was jumping down that hole in Made in Abyss. I know, weird side tangent, but it's sort of related in a way because we both go down a scary hole. If you watch the anime, you'll understand. Anyway, this area is a lot more quiet and somber, giving this eerie vibe to it, with a lot of the monsters being infected with a gloom debuff that makes their attacks reduce your maximum health, which makes you play a lot more cautiously down there. And the Sky Islands are these lush and beautiful areas that hold a ton of puzzles and shrines. These 3 planes will pretty much guarantee that you'll be spending hundreds and hundreds of hours exploring this game. There's also a ton of interesting enemy variety that will populate this game world, each with their own unique strengths and weaknesses that you'll have to take into account during battle. I just love seeing the different variations of monsters that you encounter in this world, like the Zonai, the Bokoblins, the Lizalfos, the Moblins, the Horriblins, the Yiga, and so much more that I can't remember off the top of my head. And I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but it seems like the enemies get stronger as you progress through the story. So it feels like the world around you is leveling up as you do, which is really cool as it keeps the game feeling fresh. Also, after playing so many games with really bad enemy AI, I've noticed that the enemy AI for this game is one of the smarter ones that I've experienced. They'll have a number of different tactics that they use depending on the situation of the battle. For example, when there's a group of Bokoblins that notice you, they'll try to move up together and approach you from the flank. If they have a boss with them and he blows his horn, they'll line up in a formation with their shields up. If you catch them without a weapon in their hands, they'll scramble to look for a weapon on the ground to pick up. There's so many little tactics that the enemy AI will employ that forces you to think a little more strategically when approaching a group of monsters, and it's awesome that you're rewarded for thinking outside the box. Earlier I mentioned that this game has hundreds of hours of content within it, and I'm not talking about the generic Ubisoft kind of content where you have a checklist of samey enemy forts you gotta clear out. No, this is genuine, unique content that asks you to do various different things. Sure, there are some forts that you can clear, but there are way more objectives in the world that are solved through thinking rather than fighting. I would say that most of my time spent playing this game is spent either exploring or solving puzzles, and it never gets boring because all of it is content that I genuinely wanted to do. There are hundreds of shrines, Koroks, and caves sprinkled throughout the map, except for the caverns. Unfortunately, the caverns don't really have any shrines or Koroks in them, which lore-wise makes sense, but there isn't really any replacement content for them, so it makes exploring the depths feel a bit more barren. Maybe they could have added like an underground version of shrines or something that are corrupted by darkness and you gotta cleanse them. I don't know, just add something to replace them with. Anyway, I really love the different content that's littered throughout the game because each of them are solved through so many various ways. There is never only one way to solve something, which is amazing. The multitudes of shrines here will usually ask you to solve their puzzles through building complex contraptions that utilize their physics engine in a variety of unique ways. And the best part is that you can solve them however you want. You could solve the puzzles the intended way, or you could do it your own way and cheese them. Either way, there is no correct way to solve these puzzles. And they'll ask you to do different things, like in this shrine here that requires me to build a makeshift vehicle in order to pass the shrine. But for this one, I gotta do a naked combat test. And this one, I'm playing baseball with a scuffed hammer I made. There's just so much variety here that I never got bored of doing these shrines. And the Koroks, I just love torturing them. I mean helping them. Yeah, that's what I meant. Anyway, the Koroks are simple little puzzles that ask you to unite the two friends using any method that you want to. You could pull them by a horse, you could build a raft, you could put them on a rocket. The amount of solutions for these puzzles are almost endless, and it's amazing the amount of possibilities you have in this game because the game doesn't hold your hand and you're expected to figure out a lot of the stuff here on your own. Tears of the Kingdom will give you these little clues to your next objective, and it's up to you to use your context clues to figure out what you're supposed to do next and where. I'm not gonna lie, some of these quests had me stuck because I couldn't find out what I was supposed to do because some of them were really obscure. But that's beside the point. Tears of the Kingdom respects the player's intelligence, and it's a breath of fresh air after playing so many games where they just point exactly where you need to go and what you need to do. Building rafts and solving puzzles aren't the only thing that these new powers are good for. They can also be used to build weapons. You can even use these many complex devices to build weapons of war to aid you in your conquest. I mean, aid you in your defense against the forces of evil. You can build pretty much anything you can think of. The only limit here is your creativity. Or you can just build a giant penis because why not? You can also fuse the many different items in this game onto your weapons in order to change the properties and give you an edge in battle. You got a stick and a rock? Fuse them together to make a rock hammer. You got a mushroom and a sword? Fuse them together to make a mushroom sword? The point is that you can pretty much fuse anything together, and there are so many little interactions that you can figure out here. Like adding a rocket onto your shield lets you use it to rocket jump, or putting a flame spitter on it gives you a flamethrower shield. There are just so many different little interactions that made fusing so much fun in this game. Now, the combat in this game is mostly pretty good. There were some small annoyances that kind of dragged down the experience for me, but overall there was enough depth to the combat that it kept it fun and engaging. There are so many tools that this game gives you that allows you to approach each combat scenario in any way that you please. For example, you could start off a fight by firing a bomb arrow into the middle of a pack of monsters, or you could stealth your way and sneak attack them, or you could build an orbital space cannon and obliterate their entire lineage. The point is, there is no right way to combat because you can do pretty much anything you want to. But of course, since I've got a caveman brain, all I did was run up to them and bonk them until they died. I mean, it's really fun to just run up to a monster and smack them off a cliff and watch them ragdoll their way down. Anyway, the combat mechanics in this game are surprisingly really deep and they allow for a lot of skill expression. like parrying, backflips, side hops, mid-air bullet times. If you take the time to master the mechanics of combat, you'll really feel like a badass when you defeat a tough monster perfectly. And the boss fights in this game are so fun. Now, most of the boss fights in this game are pretty easy. They'll have like 2 to 3 attacks that are pretty simple to dodge, and they'll have clear weaknesses for you to exploit. What I really liked about some of the bigger bosses is that you had to climb some of them Dragon's Dogma style in order to hit the weak points on their backs. It was just really cool doing that because you don't see that sort of mechanic often in games. Now, I did say a lot of the boss fights were pretty easy, but there were some that gave me a hard time as well. I was surprised at how often I was dying to some of these fights. I think I've died as many times as I did in Elden Ring, maybe even more. And sometimes I was wondering to myself, why is this game so hard? Isn't this supposed to be a kid's game? I had about 22 hearts by the end of the game, and I was still getting 2-shot by the silver monsters. And I was getting my ass handed to me by Ganondorf because I could not for the life of me parry his attacks. Then I discovered how to do a flurry rush, and he became not so difficult, but I still just barely managed to beat him. Yeah, I know, skill issue. Anyway, there's also a durability system that some people don't like because it's kinda annoying that you have to keep cycling through weapons after like 10 hits. Which is understandable, some people like to keep playing with their favorite weapons throughout the entire game. I for one kinda liked it because I'm the type of person that enjoys it when a game forces you to swap weapons constantly. It keeps the gameplay fresh and makes the loot that the enemies drop almost always useful, but that's just me. Now, I'm not going to go into too much spoilers for this game, but the story is nothing really groundbreaking. Ganon's the big evil bad guy for the umpteenth time and wants to unleash the ancient darkness to conquer the world. Zelda gets yeeted by Ganon and goes missing. And you play as Link, who's the chosen one that must save the world from darkness and save the princess. Correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't this basically been the story for every Legend of Zelda game? I know it differs slightly in some games, but overall this has been the general outline for the story, right? I'm not hating on it or anything, I've just never played a Legend of Zelda game before, so I don't know anything about the stories. But that aside, in Tears of the Kingdom, you have to journey across the lands to find the 5 secret sages in order to aid your battle against the Demon King Ganon. You then fight him, defeat him, then save the princess and the whole world. During your quest to find all the secret sages, you'll come across their different temples that you have to complete in order to unlock them permanently as a companion. Now, one criticism I do have is that the objective design for these dungeons all feel too similar. For the fire temple, you gotta unlock the 5 locks to the door. For the water temple, you gotta turn on the 5 water sprinklers. The wind temple, you gotta turn on the 5 gears. You get the point. But the puzzles that you do for them are interesting though, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Also, what was kind of annoying was that during these temples, you would have your companion with you assisting you with their powers. The thing about these is that you access these powers in such a weird way. You see, in order to use them, you gotta talk to the NPC companion so they can give it to you. But the thing is that during combat, they'll be running around fighting enemies, running towards the boss, doing whatever. So now I need to chase them around and risk getting hit for half my health in order to use their powers. They really needed to make some sort of radial menu to let us access these better, because some of these powers are really handy in a fight. But that's about it for my complaints. The story overall is less focused on the world-ending catastrophe and focuses more on the small, lighthearted little interactions you have with the characters in the world. It's weirdly campy and comfortable being surrounded by these characters who are mostly just happy-go-lucky and don't have a shred of malice in them. It's just kind of funny how everyone depends on Link to be this heroic savior of the world, meanwhile he's just goofing off doing whatever.
Zelda, we rely on your knight and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link.
Now, I don't usually mention music in my reviews unless it's really good music. And since I've included a music section in this review, that means I believe Tears of the Kingdom soundtrack is immaculate. This OST has only been out for 2 weeks and it has already become one of the most memorable soundtracks this year. There is such a huge diversity of different music used in this game for pretty much everything here. Whether it's the simple yet very effective ambient music used while you're exploring out in the world, or the beautiful orchestra used to bring out the powerful emotions during the cutscenes, or the creepy and disturbing pieces whenever you're in a gloom-filled area, there are just so many individual pieces of music used to evoke a variety of different emotions for such specific moments in the game. And apparently this game has 4 music composers. No wonder the soundtrack is so rich with diversity with over 100 pieces in the OST. Tears of the Kingdom's music is really amazing and I felt like I just had to mention it here because it really helps in immersing me into this world. When I first purchased this game, I literally did not know what I was getting into as I have never played a Legend of Zelda game before in my life. I always knew the fanbase absolutely loved the franchise, but I never knew why they loved it so much. Even with Breath of the Wild, I knew the game was good, but I didn't know why it was good. Now that I've played Tears of the Kingdom, I can finally understand how goated this franchise is. From the characters, the gameplay, the lore, the art, everything about this game is top tier and I can confidently say that this game is a strong contender for Game of the Year. I know it's still too early to make that decision, but Tears of the Kingdom is one of those rare masterpieces of a game where the quality is just so hard to reach. I don't know, I'm still looking forward to Final Fantasy 16, but I don't know if that will be on the same level as Tears of the Kingdom. But that's just me. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments down below and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more reviews in the future. See ya.